Trump is panicking, and you can see it. What was supposed to be a triumphant State of the Union is collapsing into a humiliating rejection on a historic scale. 72 members of Congress are boycotting his address. Not a handful, not a protest stunt. 72 elected officials, refusing to sit there and legitimize what they see as an authoritarian spectacle. This has never happened at this scale. And MAGA world is spiraling. Fox is melting down on air. Newsmax is lashing out. MAGA Mike Johnson is calling it shameful, with the brittle tone of someone watching control slip through his fingers. Because this isn't about decorum, it's about legitimacy. And legitimacy is evaporating in real time. Trump wanted a coronation. He's getting empty seats. And here's the part that should terrify him. The boycott keeps growing. Every new name added to that list is another crack in the illusion of dominance. The reaction from regime media is the incriminating admission. If this were meaningless, they wouldn't be obsessing over it. If it were petty, they wouldn't be dedicating segment after segment to attacking it. But they are. They are counting absences like battlefield casualties, because they understand what this signals. This is not routine partisan drama. This is erosion. This is a visible fracture inside the performance of power. When dozens upon dozens of lawmakers publicly refuse to attend a sitting president's address, it screams instability. It screams insecurity. It screams that the cabal mentality demanding obedience, show up, clap, normalize the grotesque, is no longer working. Trump thrives on spectacle, on forced applause, on projection of strength. But tonight, the optics are disastrous. This isn't unity. This is a legitimacy crisis unfolding live, and you can feel the panic building. Now let's talk about the hypocrisy. Because the same MAGA figures clutching their pearls tonight are the very people who spent years normalizing chaos, disruption, and outright contempt for democratic norms. They are suddenly lecturing about decorum. Really? Let's look at what they're actually saying. You have Maria Bartiromo bringing on MAGA Republicans who are acting stunned that Democrats would boycott. One of them says it's incredible that Democrats are so angry about President Trump's success. Success? That's the spin. That's the gaslighting. According to them, Trump has been so successful on so many levels that Democrats just can't handle it. Let me show you the clip. They frame it as jealousy. They frame it as bitterness. As if 72 members of Congress woke up one morning and thought, you know what? I'm just too angry about all this winning. That's the first lie. Then you have Jesse Waters going even further. He calls this a historic boycott. And he's right about one thing. It is historic. But then he pivots. He claims Democrats refuse every moment of national unity. He compares it to the Olympics, to the Super Bowl, to Thanksgiving dinners. He suggests this is childish, petulant behavior, like skipping a book party you don't want to attend. Let's look at what he really said. He argues that showing up is simply the right thing to do, that these members are getting paid, that not attending is somehow disrespecting voters. He even suggests that if you're running for office, you need to show your face for the cameras, because there are 10 million eyeballs watching. Notice what's happening there. Attendance is being equated with patriotism. Applause is being equated with loyalty. Silence is being equated with maturity. That's not unity. That's performative obedience. And then comes Newsmax. They bring on members of Congress who say they attended Biden's speeches out of respect for the office. They invoke kindergarten lessons about the golden rule. Treat others how you want to be treated. That sounds nice. But where was this golden rule when Republicans disrupted addresses? Where was this reverence when members heckled, shouted, and staged their own theatrics? Where was this respect when Trump himself refused to accept election results and incited chaos around the certification of votes? This sudden devotion to decorum is selective outrage. And then you have MAGA Mike Johnson stepping to the podium and calling the boycott shameful. He says Republicans don't do that. He claims they always show up, no matter who is president. He insists constituents are disenfranchised if their representative isn't sitting in that seat. Let's pause there, because what's actually disenfranchising is pretending that attendance equals endorsement of reality. When lawmakers say they refuse to normalize what they view as authoritarian behavior, that's not skipping work. That's making a statement about legitimacy. But MAGA world can't admit that. Instead, they repeat the same talking points. We're putting money back in your pockets. We're restoring peace through strength. We're defending the border. Republican results. It's a script, a loop, a mantra. And here's the contradiction that's impossible to ignore. They say the boycott proves Democrats are weak, but their reaction proves they feel threatened. If this were truly insignificant, they wouldn't be mobilizing the entire state-aligned media apparatus to condemn it. They wouldn't be running segment after segment attacking absent lawmakers. They wouldn't be obsessing over the number. First 10, then 20, then 30, now over 70. The growth of that number is the story. And the louder they scream about decorum, the more obvious it becomes. This is not about unity. It's about control. They expected applause. They're getting defiance. Now let's go deeper, because the meltdown we're witnessing isn't just emotional. It's structural. The receipts are everywhere if you actually listen to what they're saying. Start with the corporate media lunch at the White House. I want you to picture this. Hours before the State of the Union, network anchors are sitting down with Donald Trump. Off the record, on the record, being handed previews, being told what he's going to say, being fed the narrative in advance. Let's look at what was described. One anchor says they had the privilege of eating lunch with the president. The privilege. Think about that word choice. While ICE raids are escalating, while the administration is bragging about deportations, while legal battles over executive authority are unfolding in federal courts. Privilege. Now I'm reading from what was reported about that lunch. Trump says tonight's pitch will be that the country is about to have the best 3 years economically in the nation's history. He says it's already started. Stop there. Already started? Inflation pressure, housing affordability crisis, ongoing tariff battles, and yet we're told, in advance, that this will be the greatest economic stretch in American history. That's not policy detail, that's magical thinking. Then comes the Iran discussion. The president tells these anchors that Tehran wants a deal more than I do, but they won't say the magic words that they won't build a bomb. Magic words. Notice the pattern. The language is theatrical. It's simplistic. It reduces complex geopolitical negotiations into playground rhetoric. Say the magic phrase and everything changes. You can't make this up. And while that's happening, the Supreme Court has just ruled that, yes, he actually does need to work with Congress on sweeping permanent tariffs. That's not me editorializing. That's the court reinforcing constitutional boundaries. Yet, we're being told he doesn't need lawmakers for things the Constitution explicitly assigns to them. That contradiction is sitting there in plain sight. Now, let's contrast that with what's happening outside the chamber. Congresswoman Yasamin Ansari announces she's boycotting and bringing attention to a constituent detained by ICE for more than a year. She describes witnessing this woman vomiting blood, losing weight, being denied medical care. Let's pause. On one side, you have anchors discussing tax cuts over lunch with the president. On the other side, you have lawmakers describing a leukemia patient deteriorating in detention. That contrast is staggering. And here's another detail that matters. Some Democratic members are giving their tickets to Epstein survivors. They're wearing teal scarves, symbolizing sexual assault awareness, butterfly pins in memory of a victim who took her own life. That is not performative unity theater. That is deliberate counter-programming. While Trump prepares to speak for potentially 3 hours, 3 hours, according to what he told reporters, lawmakers are bringing survivors of abuse into that chamber. They're forcing the visual juxtaposition. Policy boasts versus lived trauma. You cannot separate those optics. Meanwhile, MAGA Mike Johnson is saying Republicans don't do this. They don't boycott. They respect the office. He insists it's about dignity and tradition. But let's examine that claim carefully. We have footage from prior years of interruptions, heckling, visible displays of protest. We have documented refusal to accept election outcomes. We have January 6th still casting a shadow over institutional respect. So when Johnson claims moral superiority on decorum, that's selective memory at best. This is what gaslighting looks like in real time. And then there's the number, 72. The reason that number keeps being repeated on Fox and Newsmax is because it keeps growing. First, they mocked it. Then they minimized it. Then they called it petty. Now they're calling it historic, but in a tone of outrage. Because they didn't expect scale. They didn't expect coordination. They didn't expect an alternative broadcast on the National Mall, drawing real-time viewership. And let's talk about that alternative for a moment. The People's State of the Union is being framed by its organizers as a refusal to normalize what they describe as the most corrupt and authoritarian administration in American history. That language is not subtle. It's confrontational. It's accusatory. Whether you agree with that framing or not, the political significance is undeniable. You now have parallel narratives unfolding simultaneously. Inside the chamber, strength, economic triumph, border security, peace through strength. Outside the chamber, detention horror stories, sexual assault survivors, legitimacy crisis. That split screen is devastating optics. And the reaction from regime-aligned media proves they understand the stakes. They're not laughing this off. They're not ignoring it. They are dedicating airtime to condemning it, shaming it, attacking it. Because in politics, absence can be louder than applause. And tonight, dozens of empty seats may speak louder than anything said at the podium. This is not just about attendance. It's about who controls the narrative of legitimacy in this country. And that battle is unfolding live. Now let's zoom out, because this boycott doesn't exist in isolation. It fits into a much larger pattern, one that's becoming harder and harder to ignore. This is what decline looks like when it tries to cosplay as dominance. Think about Trump's recent public appearances, the rambling, the repetition, the off-script rants that spiral into grievance monologues. He's not projecting calm authority. He's ranting and raving like a man who believes volume substitutes for competence. He jumps from border fear-mongering to personal vendettas to imaginary economic booms as if sheer confidence can bend reality. That's not strength. That's insecurity dressed up as bravado. And we've seen this movie before. Trump-branded casinos? Bankrupt. Trump steaks? Gone. Trump University? Fraud judgment. Atlantic City? Collapse. The pattern is consistent. Overpromise, hype relentlessly, blame others when the structure cracks. Now apply that pattern to governance. Massive promises, grandiose economic declarations, claims that the next 3 years will be the greatest in history, that it's already started, that tariffs don't need congressional approval, that geopolitical crises can be solved with magic words. It's the same formula, magical thinking. But here's where it gets politically dangerous. Because while he's projecting economic euphoria, voters are still dealing with rent they can't afford, grocery bills that haven't magically dropped, and a housing market that remains brutally tight. You can chant economic boom all you want. People feel their bank accounts. And that gap between rhetoric and lived experience, that's where legitimacy erodes. Now layer in the electoral reality. Special elections over the past cycles have shown tightening margins in places that were supposed to be safe. Polling volatility, suburban shifts, youth turnout swings. Even in deep red districts, enthusiasm isn't monolithic. And when 72 members of Congress are publicly refusing to attend your signature speech, it signals something internal as well, fractures inside the broader coalition. This is why regime media is so aggressive right now. They understand that midterms are narrative battles. If Trump walks into that chamber projecting unstoppable momentum while half the country appears compliant, that's powerful imagery. But if the visual becomes dozens of empty seats and a competing broadcast drawing attention to detention stories and abuse survivors, the aura of inevitability weakens. Politics is psychological, and psychology is shifting. Look at how MAGA figures frame everything as disrespect. They say Democrats are childish, petty, cowards. They claim unity is being sabotaged. But unity under what conditions? Unity that requires silence? Unity that requires smiling through policies you believe are destructive? That's not unity. That's enforced conformity. And when conformity begins to crack publicly, strongman branding suffers. Authoritarian aesthetics rely on overwhelming imagery, full chambers, thunderous applause, choreographed optics. When those visuals fracture, the mythology weakens. You don't need a majority revolt. You just need visible dissent at scale. 72 visible dissenters. And remember something else. Trump thrives on spectacle length. He reportedly expects this speech to stretch toward 3 hours. 3 hours of dominance theater. 3 hours of narrative control. 3 hours of attempting to drown out criticism through sheer volume. But long speeches can also expose fatigue. They can amplify rambling, they can highlight exaggeration, they can remind viewers of past overstatements that never materialized. The longer the performance, the higher the risk of contradiction. And contradiction is already everywhere. He says he doesn't need Congress for certain actions, while courts are reminding him he does. He says the economy is already booming, while voters remain anxious. He says unity matters, while branding opponents enemies of the state. That tension accumulates. So when you see Fox and Newsmax obsessing over attendance, when you see corporate anchors proudly describing their privileged lunch access, when you hear lectures about decorum from figures who defended far more disruptive conduct in the past, understand what's happening. This is narrative defense. This is image containment. This is an ecosystem attempting to hold together the projection of inevitability. But inevitability is fragile. And once the illusion cracks publicly, once Americans start seeing defiance not as fringe, but as organized, momentum shifts. This boycott is not the cause of decline. It's a symptom of it. And symptoms are getting harder to ignore. Here's what this ultimately comes down to. This isn't about empty seats. It's about empty legitimacy. When more than 70 members of Congress refuse to attend a sitting president's State of the Union, that is not petty politics. That is a statement. A statement that normalization has limits. A statement that truth matters more than optics. A statement that democracy is not a stage prop for authoritarian theatrics. On one side, you have spectacle. Long speeches, grand promises, magical economic predictions, demands for applause. On the other side, you have lawmakers saying, "We will not participate in the illusion." That contrast is the moral dividing line. This is the difference between accountability and propaganda, between reality and spin, between democracy and blind loyalty to a personality cult. And the reaction from regime media, the panic, the outrage, the obsessive counting of boycotters, tells you everything you need to know. They understand what's at stake. The illusion of inevitability is cracking. If you believe independent media matters right now, support it. Share this. Talk about it. Stay engaged. Because narratives shape power, and power without accountability is dangerous. This story isn't ending tonight. It's just beginning.